Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Metal Slug 5, another fun entry in that classic series. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Originally released in arcades and the Neo Geo back in November of 2003, we fast forward 15 years later and Metal Slug 5 finds itself released as an arcade archive Neo Geo title, which is available across multiple platforms. Today we're looking at the Switch version. So as you dive into the game itself, you're taken to your soldier select screen. Here you can select one of 4 soldiers. As far as the way that they play, they're all functionally identical, so you can just pick whoever you like. You've got Marco, you've got Eddie, you've got Tarma, and you've got Theo. We'll just go and play as the main character of the franchise, Marco. And diving in, we're dropped right into Mission 1 and the frantic run and gun gameplay of the Metal Slug franchise. So if you're not familiar with the Metal Slug franchise, it's basically a classic run and gun, very much in the vein of your Contras and those type of titles. So we have the ability to shoot, we also have the ability to jump, of course. We also have bombs that we can throw. They're more similar to grenades, but still, those will come in quite useful against specifically armored mech units. And in addition to that, if you happen to go and be close range to enemies, you'll use a short range attack, which is a knife slash. Well, it depends on the character, but in the case of Marco here, it's a knife slash, which will do heavy damage, and at least for most of the usual fodder enemies, it will take them out right away. Now, certain enemies, as well as the prisoners of war that we go and rescue, will drop or give us upgraded weapons. So, like in this case, we got the Chaser, which homes in on enemies. It's basically a powerful rocket launcher. But if you look up in the top of the screen, in the HUD there, you'll see we've got a display that lists arms next to our bomb. So if you have a weapon that has limited ammo, that's where your ammo will be displayed. So you do have to be careful about how much you use a particular weapon, as, well, it won't last forever. For certain situations like that wall there, using our bombs is a really good way to go, as it really deals a pretty significant amount of damage, allowing us to get past much faster. So we find ourselves in the second part of Mission 1. Here, we have to make it into this temple. We have to be careful not to get squished by this wall that's coming down from the top. There's also those slugs, which if we happen to be around when they've been on the screen for too long, well, we'll have the potential of being burned, as they'll just kind of burst into flames. That actually can be quite dangerous. We got past that section alright, and we have to keep on moving through these stages fighting these natives. So this area could be a little bit dangerous, as we've got all these flame traps moving along the walls. So once you free the prisoners of war, they'll... Oh, we got burned by said flame trap. Once you free the prisoners of war, if you happen to touch them again, then they'll give you some sort of either item for points or a weapon that can definitely be useful. There are also a couple other items that can give you, like if you happens to be in a section with a vehicle like this that we just got into, then they potentially will give you fuel, which will keep the vehicle going longer. So the vehicles, when you come across something that says in, you can jump into those vehicles, and the vehicles themselves are actually extremely powerful, though they do have a health bar at the top, which will deplete slowly over time. So this vehicle that we're in right now is the Slug Gunner, one of the new vehicles that we find in Metal Slug 5. So the Slug Gunner is basically a walking mech that has the ability to do close range damage, as well as it's got a useful cannon attack, and it can go and do close range attacks, kind of similar to Marco's melee attack. Unfortunately, we came to the end of the section where we can use it, so now we're back on foot using our standard weaponry. So I just picked up the rocket launcher, which is actually a little homing as well, so nice for being able to take out enemies quickly. We just have to take care of the spawner and we can move on to the stage's boss. So the stage's boss kind of plays a little bit into the plot of the game, where we're basically chasing this organization that sold some secrets about the metal slugs, which are the series names and also the series main tank. So here we're actually fighting a giant metal slug. So if you note or if you're familiar with the series before, you'll know the design of the tank itself. I find it actually kind of funny that it's trying to stomp us throughout its attack. Well, there was one form of movement I forgot to mention that was added into Metal Slug 5 as well. We also have a slide attack that we can use to both dodge under attacks as well as make our way quickly through the game. So this fight is rather nice as we keep on having all these prisoners of war popping in to help us, dropping... Oh, we got crushed. Dropping power-ups as well as like points that we can use throughout the course of our fight with the giant metal slug. Oh, am I actually gonna... Nope. So at the end of the stage, if you haven't died and you've collected the prisoners of war, you'll see all the prisoners of war you've collected, and each one of them actually has a different name. So it's just a really cool feature, but unfortunately it has to go and be the life that you've collected them on that you defeat the stage with to actually see that little fun Easter egg, as it were, I guess. So between some of the stages, there are these like brief cutscenes, and this kind of helps advance the plot or the story of what's going on. So there's this mask that fell from the sky, and these natives, one of them picked up, put it on, and he's like struck with lightning, and well, I guess what's going on there is he ends up like being like taken over and like forming some sort of cult. It's really weird, but then again, like that's just the way that Metal Slug happens to be. So in the second stage, we happen to find ourselves fighting more of this army that was responsible for stealing the plans for the Metal Slug. Speaking of which, the Metal Slug. A super awesome tank with a turret that can go and aim in 360 degrees around us, as well as a cannon. So actually the 360 degrees around us is important to note, because in this game, you really only have the ability to fire when you're by yourself, either left or right, or up and down. That's important to note, because there are some enemies that will be below you, or diagonal, and it takes a little bit more effort to go and shoot those enemies. The way that we manage to achieve that is, well, if they're below you, you have to jump up and shoot down, and certain weapons like the machine gun, if you go from firing up into firing either left or right, there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to make your shots travel in a diagonal pattern. But that's really about the only way unless you're in a vehicle. So, you know, that's definitely one of my complaints about the series as a whole. There we had to take out a couple tanks, and we just progress our way through the stage. So that's basically it. There are a total of 5 missions throughout the course, broken up into sections like we've encountered so far. And really, as far as a run and gun, it's a really fun little romp of game to play through, and which is kind of perfect, is really that was something that I was looking for. It was just what I was in the mood for, and with it having recently released as an arcade archive title, I figured I'd give this one a try, as I hadn't played Metal Slug 5. I've played several of the other Metal Slugs before, just not this one. So there we have it, Metal Slug 5 served up for your enjoyment. Let's talk a little bit about the minus flavors that I feel the game has. So the biggest one is, I just don't like the fact that it doesn't give you the ability to go and shoot at a diagonal while you're running. It's a minor thing really, but for me, It would make my enjoyment that much better if I just could do that. And then, it is primarily an arcade-developed title. So, one thing that you have with that sort of design mentality is just the higher difficulty. There are all these prisoners of war that we're freeing that have individual names, and like, I would really like to be able to have all that information for me available at the end of a stage, regardless of if it was with like the same life or not, as games like this are inherently very difficult to, well, one life clear the entire game, let alone even one life clear let's see a stage, or reverse that. So, you know, it'd just be nice to go and see who you'd ultimately had saved. But as far as the plus flavors are concerned, well, one thing that I feel this game really does excellent is just it has that really fun Metal Slug feel to it. And what I mean by that is it's just that classic run and gun where you just like dive right in and you're fighting all these different enemies. Then it's like sometimes unfair, it's like silly, you've got all those awesome vehicles to pilot, because you've got, like, so far we've seen the Slug Gunner and we've seen the Metal Slug itself. At the end of this stage there's the Slug Jet, and there are several others throughout the course of the game that we encounter as well. A sub, a walker called the Spider Slug, and even just a car that's got a turret mounted to it. Really fun stuff. And then there's also the sprite work that the game has. So, with that said, I've definitely enjoyed the time that I've put in with Metal Slug 5, and if you're looking for a fun run and gun to just fire up during like this holiday season, then this is one that I can heartily recommend. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday, as it's right before New Year's 2019. I just want to go and say and wish everybody a Happy New Year. And I look forward to seeing you again both next week and next year.